Hey everybody, it's Tuesday and it's 3 o'clock on the dot, which means today is Tech Tuesday. I'll be right back. I'm going to be talking about some broadband stories that would impact you if you are a broadband service provider. Be right back. Thanks for joining me. I'm Rick Uzzi here at Zcorum. Again, Tech Tuesday today, so I want to be covering some broadband news stories. Now, I've been doing daily live streams at various times during the day about the Infrastructure Act with broadband infrastructure that's been out. So I'm doing that daily, but today I wanted to go over some of the other stories that I think would be impactful to broadband service providers. So let's take a look at those. So first off here, excuse me. First off, we see that there's this court case that is going to be something that was going to be specifically for New York, but really it would have been setting a really scary kind of precedent for other states. Public knowledge bent into court. States can regulate broadband rates. So basically, they filed this amicus brief. Public Knowledge and the Benton Institute for Broadband Society have filed an amicus brief in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, which is hearing an appeal of a lower court injunction against a New York state law that would mandate affordable broadband. So this was an unfunded mandate where ISPs would have to have these affordable broadband plans at a certain price. Back in June, a lower court issued an injunction that temporarily blocks enforcement of the law, which requires ISPs to provide low-cost broadband to low-income households, and signaled that the ISPs are likely to win the underlying case that the law should not go into effect at all. So again, required, unfunded mandate, and this had nothing to do with whether those ISPs took any funds from the state or federal agencies. This was just, if you were just an ISP of a certain size, I think it's 20,000 or more subscribers, then this would apply to you. Public Knowledge and Benton argue in their brief that the state's move to ensure affordable broadband access for New Yorkers is an important public policy goal, but the law is not preempted by federal law under any theory or preemption. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that there are federal programs, existing ones and one that's coming out, that would make this, in my opinion, not really needed. Specifically, the Affordable Broadband Act, this is the New York bill, which was to have gone into effect June 15th, would require ISPs in the state to offer low-income households high-speed broadband, at least 25 megabits per second download speeds for $15 a month, or of 200 megabits for no more than $20 per month. So again, if you were an ISP of a certain size, then you'd have to have these plans for anybody that qualified as a low-income household for as little as $15 a month. At our nomination hearing for the third Democratic seat on a 5-member FCC, Gigi Sohn, former head of Public Knowledge, said that she was not in favor of broadband rate regulation, but did not agree that low-cost broadband requirements and new broadband subsidies under the Biden administration were the same thing. And she's right there. I mean, they're not the same thing. Again, this New York bill was an unfunded mandate, these regulations, whereas the emergency broadband benefit and the affordable connectivity program that's in the infrastructure bill, those are funded in a sense. So this is not something where these are actually subsidies that the ISPs are signing up for and happy to provide. As to the need for low-cost broadband mandates, ISPs are already offering a variety of low-cost broadband plans using the FCC's Lifeline broadband subsidies, and will be offering more with billions of dollars of COVID-19 and broadband infrastructure money. So with COVID, we had the emergency broadband benefit that I think was part of the ARPA regulations for COVID, and then that is being transitioned. That was like $3.2 billion, and there's still money there, and then that's being transitioned at the end of the year over to the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is part of the IIJA, the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, which is the $1.2 trillion, and then 65 billion of that or so is for broadband. So that is $14.2 billion just for that affordability program. So that is money that is already going to be allocated. Again, there's the EBB that's currently going on now. Lots of people, millions of people are signed up for that, and hundreds of ISPs around the country are offering that. So again, I think this New York law is not, I don't think this new brief is going to make any difference. I don't see how this passes muster. Senate bill would expand Universal Service Fund contribution base. So one of the issues we've had with the Universal Service Fund is it started out with long ago with helping to provide telco to rural areas and low-income kinds of things, and there's just fewer and fewer telephone accounts, and broadband is really the way things are these days. So it's just really hard to get the money now for basically where they're collecting it from. I mean, when you get that little junk fee on your bill for USF, that's where that's all going to, and that number's been getting higher, been rising over the years as there have been fewer and fewer telephone customers and more money needed for broadband. So a bipartisan bill introduced in the Senate would expand the USF contribution base. That includes 4 programs which fund rural broadband and telecom deployments, low-income broadband, telecom, school, and library connectivity, and a rural telehealth program. The program is currently funded as a percentage of long-distance telecom voice revenues, so you can see why that number's been going down. A cost that telecom providers pass on to subscribers as a charge on their telephone bills. The bill, titled the Reforming Broadband Connectivity Act of 2021, does not specify who would be required to pay into the contribution base, but instead would direct the FCC to conduct a study and make a determination about that. The FCC would have 120 days after the date of the enactment of the bill to complete the study, within a year to complete rulemaking to reform the contribution system. The current USF funding mechanism has become increasingly impractical for various reasons, as broadband revenues are not included in the base from which providers and ultimately customers pay for the program. So obviously, it's hard to fund broadband if you're not getting fees from other broadband customers. It's all telco. Percentage of long-distance telecom revenues that go towards the fund now runs about 30%, and a 2020 telecompetitor analysis projected that would hit 50% by 2030. USF was originally established to cover certain telephone costs in high-cost rural areas and for low-income households. Over the years, the USF programs have been expanded to cover broadband, but the funding mechanism hasn't been adjusted, so that is the crux of the issue. The Reforming Broadband Connectivity Act is sponsored by Amy Klobuchar, John Thune, John Hickenlooper, and Jerry Moran, and that's 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. So it's a bipartisan bill, which is always nice to see. Now, is it needed? I mentioned the IIJA, and the text of that bill has something specifically in there about the USF. You see here a report, and it's very similar to what they're asking to do in this particular bill that they proposed. Report on the future of the Universal Service Fund, not later than 30 days after the date of enactment of this act, and that was enacted, that President Biden signed this a couple weeks ago. The committee shall commence a proceeding to evaluate the implications of this act and the amendments made by this act on how the Commission should achieve the universal service goals for broadband. In general, not later than 270 days after the date of the enactment, the Commission shall submit to Congress a report on the options of the Commission for improving its effectiveness in achieving the universal service goals for broadband in light of this Act, and the amendments made by this Act and other legislations that address those goals. The Commission may make recommendations for Congress on further actions. In submitting the report, they may not in any way reduce the congressional mandate to achieve universal service goals for broadband, and they may provide recommendations for Congress to expand the universal service goals for broadband if the Commission believes such an expansion is in the public interest, and I would expect that they would. So you can see a lot of what they were talking about in this prior story about this bill that they want to put in is really already in this IIJA Act. Speaking of the FCC, Senators press Sohn and Davidson on how they'll implement the broadband bill, and that's both the FCC and the NTIA. The U.S. Senate Commerce Committee held a confirmation hearing on Wednesday for President Biden's nominees for National Telecommunication and Information Administration, the NTIA administrator. And the NTIA is the organization that is going to be managing this infrastructure bill. That would be Gigi Sohn that they put forward there. And if confirmed, for the FCC, excuse me, and then if confirmed, both Sohn and Davidson will hold key roles in setting rules and implementing the $65 billion broadband bill. While the NTIA is responsible for distributing most of the funding to the states, and that's where that funding is going on that bill, the FCC is charged with updating the nation's broadband maps, as well as coming up with rules around digital discrimination or digital redlining. That would be the equity portion of the broadband bill, as well as coming up with rules around, establishing an affordability program similar to the emergency broadband benefit, and that's the Affordable Connectivity Program that is in the Act, and then assessing the future of the Universal Service Fund, as we just discussed. So These are two of the people that are kind of key to implementing the infrastructure bill and those parts of it. Overall, the nominees offered few details beyond what's written in the broadband legislation, but affirmed their commitment to working collaboratively to implement it as successfully as possible. So first of all, serving the unserved. Several senators raised concerns about funds for broadband going toward overbuilding or building networks in places where they already exist. And that is an issue sometimes if you're providing funds to build out a broadband network. You don't want that to be in an area that already has good broadband. And that's one of the reasons that the mapping part is so important. They need to make sure they get the maps properly, where they're accurate as far as where broadband is. Pressed by Senator Deb Fischer on prior comments she made describing overbuilding as another word for competition, Sohn said while she stands by those comments, she also agrees with serving those in the U.S. without any access first, as spelled out in the infrastructure legislation. I do support what's in the IIJA, the notion that the money should go first to building where there is nothing or unserved areas, and then only then should underserved areas be served. So those are two definitions in the Act. Unserved is an area where a significant portion, I think it might be 90% of the area, doesn't have service at least 20 by 3. And then underserved is similar, but that service would be 100 by, excuse me, that's 25 by 3. And then underserved would be 100 by 20. Is that right? Yeah, 100 by 20. So you've got unserved and underserved. Well, if you've got an operator in there already that's providing either unserved or underserved, let's say underserved, so they're already providing at least 100 by 20, then does that mean, what is her opinion as far as overbuilding in that area? Because she's talking about competition. So I think they would like to see prices go down, and competition can do that. So if you've only got one operator in an area, they're providing good service, maybe their pricing is not as competitive as it could be because they're the only provider in town. So that is something they want to address, and they're doing that through this affordable connectivity for people that are low income. And then also they're hoping that they can, maybe beef up competition in other ways. Davidson, too, said that he supported comments made by Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo that the federal government must avoid using funds to overbuild networks. I think the statute is actually quite clear, and it is. It lays out a framework. Unserved is first, and you have my commitment, if confirmed, to follow that framework faithfully. And then rate regulation and munis. We just talked about rate regulation. There was a concern when this New York bill came out that was requiring a $15 broadband, and it was going to be a mandate. And at the same time, the Biden infrastructure outline came out for the broadband. It was not anything, it was no details, it was just an outline. And they really talked about affordability, almost to the point where it made you think that there would be some kind of unfunded mandate in there, but that was not the case. Sohn was asked multiple times whether she supports the FCC regulating broadband rates, to which she repeatedly said no. Asked whether she thinks private networks are better than public ones or vice versa, she said what matters is to have the choice. Now, I think the reason they asked her that is because in the Biden infrastructure bill, it really does talk a lot about not-for-profit organizations providing broadband, getting into the broadband business. That's part of the goal, to keep prices low. They figure if somebody's not trying to make a profit, then they can keep the prices low. So that would be your municipalities, your electric membership co-ops, other nonprofits, I suppose, but those are the kind of the two main ones. Maybe counties, those kinds of things. So that there is an emphasis on that. She says, I wouldn't put my thumb on the scale that one is better than the other. I just think that communities should have a choice. So that kind of goes back to that competition. But again, as far as the funds for internet, it's only supposed to go to unserved and underserved, meaning that if you've got a provider out there that's providing 100 by 20 or better, there should not be funds going to a competitor there. Broadband mapping, again, very important. Davidson and Sohn both agreed the maps are a mess and committed to fixing them. Asked for a timeline, Sohn said she could not offer one because she wasn't yet privy to the internal FCC information, which makes sense, although the FCC really needs to get these maps out before any funding can go to the states, and that can be allocated to service providers, whoever's going to be providing the service in that state, because that's part of the provision that the mapping has to be in place. So the FCC has been working on this even prior to the infrastructure bill. There was a bill that required that, that came out I think early, like in January this year. So they've been working on that. They need to get these maps out. Net neutrality. Oh, she says here, I don't think I could give you a timeline. I will just say, as a person who has said over and over again, you can't make good policy without good maps. And that's true, that we really need maps in order to determine who is unserved and underserved. Net neutrality. Last but not least, Sohn fielded multiple questions and concerns about the FCC imposing new net neutrality rules through Title II. While she repeatedly affirmed her support for net neutrality, she also said it should be the job of Congress to address. She says, if necessary, the FCC will have to go to Title II, but boy, I would really appreciate it if Congress did act. Now, there's always the question of net neutrality and whether we have it or don't. We have it, right? I mean, there's really no net neutral or not net neutral issues right now. Everybody can get access to what they want to get to. There's not any paid prioritization I'm aware of. If there's ever an issue where some service is being degraded for competitive reasons, that's always handled through the FCC and the FTC. So mechanisms are in place to take care of that. Do we really need Title II regulations, and do we need any kind of act by Congress to do this? I would think only when you see a problem do you do that. And at this point, there's not been a problem. It's a very robust, net neutral internet that we have today. Broadband subads returned to normal pre-pandemic levels in Q3. So this is the latest information for the third quarter. And as would be expected, we had this huge upsurge during the pandemic, but that seems to have leveled out now. As more people continue to work from home and cut the traditional video cord, broadband growth by cable operators and telcos that are increasingly rolling out fiber continued into the third quarter. So it's still robust. Lightman Research Group found that the largest cable and wireline phone providers in the U.S., representing about 96% of the market, acquired about 630,000 net additional broadband internet subscribers in the third quarter of 2021, compared to a pro forma gain of approximately 1.525 million subscribers in the third quarter of 2020. So you can see it's dropped quite a bit. Still, again, it's a nice number of ads, but it's dropped quite a bit from the pandemic. Overall, broadband additions in the third quarter of 2021 were 41% of those from the same period a year ago. Once again, cable continued to be the dominant source of broadband growth. The top cable companies added about 590,000 subscribers in the third quarter. That's 45% of the net additions for the top cable companies in the third quarter of 2020, so down. So it's about 45% of what they were a year ago. Meanwhile, the top telcos added about 40,000 total broadband subscribers in the third quarter of 2021, compared to about 2,000 net adds in the third quarter of 2020. So if my math is correct, they're about 20% of where they were a year ago. So you can see the big difference between cable and telco. And here they list some of the service providers and total subs and added and lost. And you can see that a big chunk of that cable is Comcast and Charter. Got AT&T there being the biggest contributor and Verizon being the biggest contributors to the telco side, but you got lots of other cable operators in here, fewer telcos, so big difference. Now, we obviously expect that to change with all of this infrastructure money, but where is that going to be counted? Because when we're talking about a lot of that money going to municipalities and EMCs, what are they counted as? Not a telco, probably, not a cable company. So they're going to have to probably figure out how they're going to look at these numbers in the future. So, and then you've got cable companies also that will be deploying fiber in greenfield areas, and lots of them are starting overbuilding in their DOCSIS areas to get rid of the DOCSIS plant because of improved, less maintenance issues, improved speeds, those kinds of things. Cohen, the end is coming for telco broadband subscriber losses, as we saw that they're losing, but cable will do just fine. So they're saying here that telcos are going to start doing better. After years of broadband subscriber losses, larger telecom companies are poised to see subscriber gains in 2023 to 2024, according to researchers at investment bank Cohen. This will occur as telecom companies complete record-setting fiber broadband deployments. And the telcos are going full steam ahead. AT&T, Verizon, others, I'm trying to think of who are really doing lots in the fiber area, trying to upgrade old DSL plants. So they are definitely moving ahead there, so they should see some gains. But the cable companies' broadband market share will decline only slightly from 60% today to 58% in 2027, researchers argue. Meanwhile, the size of the broadband market will increase. So Cable's not going to lose much. The overall size is going to increase because there's going to be, again, more telcos providing fiber, but again, all of this infrastructure money that's going into places where there are going to be new operators that are going to be providing broadband. Total telco broadband subscriber losses. The researchers estimate that the telcos will build broadband to 38 million homes by 2026, when they will have fiber broadband available to 80 million homes. By 2025, they expect 75% of net broadband additions to be served by fiber to the home. But again, is that all telco? No, not by any means, because there's going to be a lot of cable fiber out there by that time, 2025. Again, you'll see lots of greenfield cable, and you'll see some overbuilding of cable, and you'll see munis and EMCs and some public-private partnerships. So some of those could be telcos working with a local EMC or with a local municipality. We don't know yet, but we'll have to see how they count that. The cable decade of dominance of DSL share stealing is over, though we note that it is far from doom and gloom for cable operators, the researchers said. So yeah, there was a long period of time where cable operators were getting lots of subscribers because there was DSL plan out there and the telcos were not upgrading that at all or fast enough, so people were going over to the local cable operator. And that's probably over now as these telcos are starting to deploy more fiber to get more competitive. Cohen researchers note that cable companies will play effective defense. They expect cable companies to lock in existing subscribers with 1-year or 2-year promotions to lower prices and to offer attractive mobile broadband bundles. Researchers also note that cable infrastructure supports an affordable pathway to 10 gig speeds to compete with fiber broadband. Researchers predict 97% broadband take rates for occupied homes, 90% of total homes by 2027. So they're saying the cable operators are going to lock people into long-term commitments. So they get like a 2-year commitment. Then as the phone company comes in with fiber, it's going to be a while before that customer churns away from the cable company. So there'll be some of that. But again, some of these cable operators will be doing some fiber to the home as well. Pay TV households to dwindle to 73 million by 2024, say these analysts. So this is on the TV side. And they say that sports and news is a big part of what is maybe preventing that from happening so quickly. The number of pay TV homes will drop to 73.2 million households by 2024. From 83 million at the end of this year, according to Moffett-Nathanson research. The analyst said the cord cutting will continue at a 4% to 5% annual pace, even though sports viewing appears to be rebounding. So more people are starting to watch sports again. I guess there's more sports to watch. You don't have to watch the cornhole tournament on ESPN because there's more live sports, other choices available for you now. There were 93 million pay TV households in the third quarter of 2019, with 83.5 million with traditional video distributors and 9.5 million on virtual multi-channel video programming distributors. They accounted for 78% of homes versus 26.4 million non-pay TV homes, or 22%. So you can see the decline here, what they're looking at. By third quarter of 2021, there were just 84 million pay TV homes, 71 million with traditional distributors, and 13 million via VMVPDs, that's virtual multi-channel video production distributors, I believe. Non-pay TV homes grew to 39 million, or 32%. By year-end, pay TV households will be down to 83 million, the analyst said. So they're looking at that continuing. By 2024, they said the number of traditional pay TV homes will equal the number of non-pay TV homes. As we look at this, kind of hard to see here, but what we have. This is our virtual MVPDs. So this would be like your YouTube TV, Sling TV kind of thing. Then we've got right here, we've got our non-pay TV. I think they must be talking about maybe your SVOD, so your subscription video on demand, and maybe your fast, free ad-supported TV kinds of options that are not pay TV. And then this is showing this is the traditional pay TV right here, and this is pay TV with the VMVPD. So this pay TV that they're talking about here would be your traditional Xfinity video, other traditional kind of cable TV options, direct TV, dish TV, and then they add on top of that, this would be your pay TV with the YouTube TVs, those kinds of things, IPTV, those kinds of options. The analysts attempted to figure out what the absolute floor was for pay TV subscribers. Sports fans are among those most likely to keep pay TV. Viewers in about 58 million households describe themselves as sports fans who watch at least one event per month. The least likely cord cutters are households with members who are both sports fans and live news viewers. Looking at that group puts the floor at about 53 million, the report said. We believe the 18 million pay TV subscribers who are regular news viewers but do not watch sports, and the 7 million who don't watch sports or news are at risk for further cord cutting. So they're saying, again, that's kind of what's keeping the pay TV, a lot of the cord cutting from happening right now. The number of households that consider themselves regular sports viewers has increased from 2019, while the number of traditional pay TV subscribers has continued to decline. We estimate that the drop in linear TV subscribers has come exclusively from people who do not view sports, and the increase in sports viewership has come primarily from people who either have cut the cord or never had a pay TV subscription in the first place, what they call cord neverers. While sports is a bulwark for pay TV, some sports are moving to streaming, the report notes, which is true. So this could change totally as you get ESPN and others, or CBS and others that are providing more and more live sports. On a streaming side, people may go ahead and look at that as an option, depending on whether there's a fee or not, because there's lots of subscription services out there, and people only want to pay for so many services. There's a lot of subscription fatigue, and we'll see here in a minute how that has an impact on these subscription services. As it says here, if more sports, here it says, we expect leagues and media owners will become more aggressive in moving sports content over the top, as it appears to be driving incremental reach without cannibalizing sports. So they're saying they're getting more people to watch it without necessarily cannibalizing their sports on other media platforms. If more sports content moves OTT, then perhaps some casual sports viewers are also at risk for further cord cutting, and I would say that would be true. And then finally here again, here's a different side of things. The streaming biz faces a 30% churn rate in 2022. Deloitte shocks the streaming biz by projecting a massive 150 million service cancellations next year. Deloitte caused a stir in streaming ranks this week with a report that suggests 2022 will be the year of the churn as customers flip between services like hungry hummingbirds working a botanical garden. I like the way this guy writes. The result, a projected 150 million service cancellations and an industry-wide churn rate of 30%. That's more churn than a butter factory. But it also suggests that churn, particularly the kind Deloitte cites, where a significant part of the audience signs up for a month or two to watch a particularly buzzy show before canceling, and moving on to another intriguing show elsewhere, will require new thinking for services that still rely too much on programming strategies left over from the broadcast cable eras. The only two companies relatively immune to the churn concerns are Netflix and Disney+, Deloitte said, for very different reasons. Netflix plays Flood the Zone at an epic scale, offering so many shows of every kind that most audiences treat it more like a pay TV smorgasbord. That makes everything available. They make everything available everywhere at the same time for the binge consumption lots of audiences love. So what they're doing is they bring out a series and they put all of those shows on at the same time. So if it's 8 or 12 or whatever in that particular year, that series, that new year series, whatever, then they're all available at the same time. People will binge watch them. But others, Disney by contrast, has kids, or more precisely their parents, wanting repeat-worthy, family-safe programming. So Disney and some others are doing a little bit differently, where when they come out with a show, like one of the Marvel shows like WandaVision or something like that, they'll bring it out a week at a time, like you might expect on a regular kind of cable TV model. So there's advantages to both. I mean, if you can binge watch something, you might binge watch a show like Stranger Things that you want to watch in 1 month, and then it's like, okay, I'll watch that. That's all I want to watch right now. Then you go on to something else. So you cancel that subscription for that month, and you go on to Disney Plus and you watch something that they have out there. Or you go to some other streaming service. I guess if you're doing it week to week, then you're keeping, if that's a good buzzworthy show, then you're keeping people tuning into that on a regular basis, and you can maybe hold them for longer. And then you have time to get additional content out that will hopefully become buzzworthy. Unlike Netflix, most streaming services have legacy outlets that they keep feeding, but they also stretch out streaming releases of their best shows over many weeks, hoping audiences remember to come back the following Tuesday, or was that Thursday? Because again, you don't think so much if it's a show that comes out on a streaming service, it's not like you're thinking must-see TV on Thursday, right? If you remember that. So, those shows just come out once a week, and you wait for the next episode to come out, and then you go watch it. And they have, again, like they say, they're feeding an existing traditional media outlet, whether it's CBS or Discovery or somebody like that. That approach is a leftover of the programming grid, and it diminishes the stickiness of the streaming service. I beg to differ in some ways, again, because if it is a good show, then it does, I think, stretch out that stickiness as long as you have enough content and you keep replacing that. Companies are trying other tactics to keep audiences around, including old-fashioned discount deals. Hulu sold one-year subscriptions over Black Friday weekend for 99 cents a month. They're also creating tiers with cheaper or free ad-supported offerings, which seems like the worst of old and new, I guess they're saying. I don't know necessarily about that. I think that will bring in more eyeballs. Ad-supported TV is very big right now, again, because there's this subscription fatigue and people start adding up what they're paying. They've cut the cord, right? They're paying for their broadband service, so they have to pay for that, and then they're adding up, which might have gone up in price, by the way. So if they cut their pay TV, then their broadband bill probably goes up because it's no longer in a bundle. Then they're looking at, let's say I'm paying for Netflix, I'm paying for Disney Plus, I'm paying for Discovery, and then there's other things that I want to watch. They start adding that all up, and they're trying to figure out where am I going to put my dollars this month. So a lot of them are looking at ad-supported, is it Tubi TV, I think, but then also other FAST, they call it free ad-supported TV, FAST, and YouTube TV, which is one of the vMVPDs that are out there that looks like a regular cable network. They are going to be, or they're talking about bringing out some ad-supported versions of that as well. So that's because of the popularity of that. A new study by 3 marketing and branding agencies said roughly half of pre-pandemic moviegoers still aren't going back to theaters. 1 in 12 will likely never return. So they're saying this could have an impact on streaming, maybe, I think for the positive. HBO, for instance, recovered nicely in 2021, boosted immeasurably by Warner Media CEO Jackson Killar's audacious and hugely controversial decision to release all of the Warner Brothers slate on the streaming service the same day they hit the theater screens. And it says here, going forward in 2022, hopefully we're going to be in a world where people are going back to theaters and not worrying about the pandemic. But I believe they are planning, next year, I didn't highlight it here, but next year will still feature a planned 12 Warner movies made for direct release on HBO Max. So I don't know if that'll be at the same time in the theaters or just on HBO Max, but that was a big reason that HBO Max did so well, because you had the new Wonder Woman movie come out right as the pandemic was getting kicked off. They made this decision. Wonder Woman came out. You had several others, the King Kong movie, Godzilla, you had several movies coming out. You've got coming out here soon, like it mentions, The Matrix will be coming out soon on HBO Max. So those are the kinds of things that, again, somebody may subscribe to HBO Max because they wanted to watch Wonder Woman. They might let that go for several months, and then The Matrix comes out, and it's like, well, let's go watch that on HBO Max, and we'll get access to the other content. Or do they go to the movies? Sounds like people are going to start, I think people will start going to the movies, although not everyone, it sounds like. So, all right, well, thanks for joining me today for Tech Tuesday. I will be back with more Tech Tuesday content next Tuesday. So if you like this, give me a thumbs up on the video. Make sure that you're subscribed and click the little button for notifications on your device or on your browser. And again, I am doing pretty much daily, I don't do them on Tuesdays, but pretty much daily broadcasts on the broadband infrastructure bill, the Biden bill, as well as other broadband infrastructure money and other broadband deployment news. So feel free to join me for that. Again, if you click the notification bell, then you'll be notified when I'm live, and you'll actually have a notification that I was live if you happen to miss it at the time. So make sure you subscribe if you want to get that news as well. Thanks again, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.